Everyone discusses the real Israelite Negroes in Americas and the Caribbean, but the Israelites are literally scattered in every single continent on earth. Now we are going to focus on Mexico. Many do not know the Israelites' population in Mexico. Many do not know that the Hebrews were shipped to Mexico during the transatlantic slave trade. So we're going to go to Wikipedia. And when you go to Wikipedia, you can simply search or Google Afro Mexicans. Now, Afro Mexicans, I'm going to read. It says Afro Mexicans, also known as Black Mexicans, are Mexicans who have a predominant heritage from sub-Saharan Africa and identify as such. See, so it's Israelites in every country. When he said scattered across the four corners of the earth, that's what he meant. I never deny, and I'm not saying that you don't have Israelites in different countries. It's just a certain group of people who are the Israelites in those countries. Okay? And you will notice that wherever you go, they refer to our people as Afro or Sub-Saharan African. Those are the Israelites in those countries. And let's continue to read. It says, I'm going to read. It says, as a single population, Afro-Mexicans includes individuals descended from black slaves brought to Mexico during the colonial era and the transatlantic slave trade.
Pequeña, yo solía pintarme con cal para decirle a mi mamá que quería estar blanca y de hecho también siempre había querido ser blanca, pero actualmente pues me di cuenta que la piel morena es bonita y sobre todo que sí, hay personas que se ven bien incluso con su color. Como los españoles esclavizaron a nuestro país, pensaron que los negros deberíamos seguir siendo esclavos.
So you see that? So the real Hebrews, as we know, the curses, were taken to those countries on slave ships. Okay? And anybody that knows the Bible and knows about this truth, they know what the scriptures say about the Israelites being scattered across the four corners of the earth as slaves, okay, as well as others of more recent immigrant African descent, including Afro-descended persons from neighboring English, French, and Spanish-speaking countries of the Caribbean and Central America, descendants of fugitive slaves who escaped to Mexico from southern United States. Look at that. And to a lesser extent, recent immigrants directly from Africa. Afro-Mexicans are most concentrated in specific, largely isolated communities, including the populations of the Costa Chica of Oaxaca and Guerrero and Veracruz, and some cities in northern Mexico. The Most High, he does things for a reason. And whenever you see our people, they're usually kind of like segregated or separated. You know, and we live amongst others, of course we do. But as a whole, we go through a lot of things with the other nations, but I believe it's the Most High will to kind of keep us separate also, you know. But now many out here are teaching that the whole continent of Mexico are Israelites. That's like saying all of Africa are Israelites, or all of West Africa, or all of Guyana or Grenada are Israelites. It doesn't make sense. You have a variety of racial demographics in Mexico, mainly Spaniards, Indians, and blacks, which are the Hebrews. You wouldn't take an Indian from Jamaica and say he is black or Hebrew, would you? So why do you do it with other Latin countries? That's something that we got to ask ourselves, okay? Now, you do have Hebrews who are like mixed in these countries. They may have Indian ancestry or something like that, you know. So when you see them, you can clearly see like they're black, but they have like Indian features too. But they're still Hebrews, okay? I'm talking about straight Native Americans or different Indian tribes, native tribes. I'm talking about them, those people that are straight natives, okay? Not people that are black and Native American, okay? That's a difference. The Afro Mexicans stand out from the other Mexicans because of the punishment set on the Hebrews, right? The curses. That's why they stand out. The curses. People say, well, you just, it's you're racist because you're just talking about black people. No, I'm just saying what the scriptures say. Okay, and we know how the Hebrews look when we read the Bible, and they still look the same today. Okay, and it's just that the Afro Mexicans in Mexico today is going through racism against the other Mexicans. It's the truth. Okay, I know Mexicans, and I know Mexicans that are honest, and they tell me these things, that the black Mexicans in Mexico deal with a lot of racism. So this is the second and third paragraph of Wikipedia. According to the recent DNA studies, although most Mexicans have a small amount of African DNA mixed into the predominant Mexican heritage gene pool, you see that? Averaging to about 5% African DNA. So this is talking about just the Mexicans that you see every day. The Mexicans that's a mixture of pretty much Spaniards and the natives. The Mexicans, the regular Mexicans that you see daily. Those Mexicans have only about 5% African DNA, according to this. But it says, although most, if it is North African and was brought to Mexico as a part of the diluted African DNA and Spanish settlers. See that? Therefore, Afro Mexicans refers specifically to those Mexicans who have above average levels of specifically West African ancestry noticeable in their phenotype. Period. So these Mexicans are distinct from the other Mexicans. They don't have 5% of black blood, so-called black blood, or it's really Hebrew blood. Okay? They're above that. Okay? They're the Hebrews. That's why they're getting treated differently. They're getting treated the same way that the Hebrews get treated in America. They're getting treated the same way that the Hebrews get treated in South Africa. They're getting treated the same way that the Hebrews get treated in Italy. They're getting treated the same way that the Hebrews get treated in Brazil, okay? Or Cuba, or different places like that. You get the picture.
Que los negros somos feos, que los negros somos malos, que los negros, etcétera, un montón de discriminación.
Entonces, si nosotros como cultura, como etnia, no existimos, obvio que tampoco el gobierno tiene una responsabilidad presupuestal, y eso es lo que queremos, ¿verdad?
Me parece bien que estén fomentando eso a los jóvenes, porque pues desafortunadamente vamos perdiendo nuestras tradiciones y no sabemos de dónde venimos.
Lo que falta más educación, más culturas afros, darle a conocer los diferentes tipos de culturas que tenemos.
It says, as opposed to other Spanish-speaking countries in Latin America with visible Afro-Latino populations, the history of Africans in Mexico has been lesser known for a number of reasons. Included among these reasons were their small numbers as a proportion of the overall population of Mexico. In small numbers. You shall be left few in number, right? Okay. Irregular intermarriage with other Mexican ethnic groups. See that? Irregular intermarriage with other Mexican groups. Racism in Mexico and other Latin American countries. So pretty much what this is saying is that these Afro-Mexicans and other Afro-Hispanics didn't really mix with other people. Because people like to say, oh, well, you mixing. No. That's what a lot of people like to push, that black people is like just super mixed with a lot of things. And it's not true. Okay? You have black people that is mixed, but it's not a high number. Okay? And if they are mixed, the blood is so far, it was so long ago, it's probably gone. You see what I'm saying? So it's saying that they didn't intermingle or intermarriage with other groups in Mexico because of the racism, right? The same way in America. In Mexico's tradition of defining itself as mestizo country, although mestizo etymologically means mix, the word is widely misunderstood with the specific meaning of mixed Spanish and Amerindian, because not all Mexicans are mestizos. A large percentage of indigenous Mexicans reside in Mexico. So what it is saying is pretty much that the Afro Mexicans are not mixed highly like the other Mexicans, okay? And a lot of the Mexicans that we see in America, a lot of them are mestizos. They have a lot of Spanish blood. But also you see a lot of Mexicans here who are pretty much just natives, Amerindians. You see what I'm saying? And you could just go by how they look. When you're on the streets, you see some Mexicans that look white. Some of them have colored eyes. They just look white until they start speaking Spanish. But then you'll see some Mexicans that literally looks like Amerindians, Native American tribes. That's pretty much what it's saying. And when you look at Mexico, if you ever been to Mexico, despite what people say, majority of the Mexicans there, like, they look like Indians. Okay. So let's go to the, I'm going to read the fourth paragraph too. Read the fourth paragraph. It says, according to the Atlantic slave trade, an estimated 200,000 enslaved Africans disembarked in New Spain, which later became modern Mexico. From the beginning, the slaves, who were mostly male, intermarried with indigenous women. In other cases, Spanish colonists raped the female slaves. Spanish colonists created an elaborate racial caste system classifying the people by racial mixture. This system broke down in the very late colonial period. After independence, the legal notion of race was eliminated. So we see here that the ones who are mixed with Amerindian came mostly through Hebrew men who intermingled with indigenous women. Okay. And also you see that it said that a lot of the Afro Mexican women were raped by Spanish colonists, right? So let's go to Deuteronomy 28, verse 30. Let's see what it says. It says, "Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof." So that's why that happened. The same way that the slaves were raped in America, the female slaves, it's the same way that it happened. It's the same thing in Mexico, okay? It's because of this judgment from Yah, because our ancestors turned from Yah, okay? So these things came upon us. Okay, so let's go to I'm going to read the sixth paragraph. The sixth paragraph. I'll read the sixth one. It says, "The genetic legacy of Mexico's once significant number of colonial-era African slaves is evidenced in non-black Mexicans as trace amounts of sub-Saharan African DNA found in the average Mexican. Evidence of this long history of intermarriage with mestizo and indigenous Mexicans is also expressed in the fact that in 2015 census, 64.9% of Afro-Mexicans also identified as indigenous Amerindian Mexicans. It was also reported that 9.3% of Afro-Mexicans speak an indigenous Mexican language." So you see that? Now look. So we see that these Afro-Mexicans, a lot of them won't identify as Indians. Sounds familiar? Sounds like the black people here, right? Black people here in America, where it's even a new wave of black people that's saying, hey, we're Indians. We were already here. Okay, that's the mystery. This is our country. We was already here when they came here. And it's a big lie. You have black Indians, dark Indians that were here, but they was not Israelites. And the ones that were Israelites, they were mixed. Because once again, you know, our ancestors, the men were laying with Native native women, and they were producing children who were Hebrews mixed with Indian. Okay, you know our people love to deny who they are because it started with slavery because they had to run from being so-called black. Okay, because they were so fearful. They were made by our enemies and oppressors to believe that they are nothing. They are the scum of the earth for being that way, for being black and looking the way they look. So they wanted to identify as something else besides that. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 17. We're going to start at verse 1. And let's see what it says. Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 1. The sin of Judah is written with a pen of iron and with the point of a diamond. Now you notice he said the sins of Judah. He's speaking to this specific kingdom, right? It is graven upon the table of their heart and upon the horns of your altars. While their children remember their altars and their groves by the green trees upon the high hills, O my mountain in the field, I will give thy substance and all thy treasures to the spoil, and thy high places for sins throughout all thy borders. Listen closely. Remember, he's talking to Judah, the kingdom of Judah. Verse 4, and thou, even thyself, shall discontinue from thine heritage that I gave you. Discontinue from your heritage that he gave you. That's why a lot of black people don't know who they are. This is why they want to identify with everything else but being a Hebrew or being black. A lot of people don't even want to admit they black. They want to be everything but that. I'm Indian. I'm mixed with this. I'm mixed with Italian and German and all this stuff. I got a grandfather, a great-great-grandfather that was Irish, but never even saw the man and nobody never even saw a picture of him. You just want to identify with something else but who you are, okay? And you don't even know about your true heritage. You do things and you don't even know where it came from. We still do things today, and everywhere where we're scattered, we still eat certain foods. We still practice certain things that came from our Hebraic heritage, but we forgot our heritage because we sinned against Yah. And this is the same thing for the Afro Mexicans in Mexico. Look what he said. And I will cause thee to serve your enemies in the land which you know not, for you have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever. The Afro Mexicans, the ones that are listening, you were taken to Mexico. Your ancestors were taken there due to the transatlantic slave trade because your ancestors turned away from the Most High. Your land is Israel. Okay? So it's time to turn back to Yah. That's what it's time to do. It's time to turn back to Yah. Okay? So, and also you see that it said that the Afro-Mexicans, they spoke indigenous Mexican language. A lot of them. They speak Spanish too. But let's go to the 7th paragraph. Look what it says. It says about 1.2 of Mexico's population has significant African ancestry, with 1.38 million self-recognized during the 2015 census, intercensus estimate. Numerous Afro-Mexicans in the 21st century are naturalized black immigrants from Africa and the Caribbean. The 2015 intercensus estimate was the first time in which Afro-Mexicans could identify themselves as such and was a preliminary effort to include the identity before the 2020 census. The question asked on the survey was based on your culture, history, and traditions. Do you consider yourself black, meaning Afro-Mexican or Afro-descendant, and came about following various complaints made by civil rights groups and government officials? Okay, so we see right here that, once again, the people that are in Afro-Mexico are low in numbers. That's why they call us the minority, because they are low in number. They are low in number. Let's see what the scripture says about that. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 62. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 62. And you shall be left few in number, whereas you were as the stars of heaven for multitude. because thou wouldest not obey the voice of Yah thy Elohim. See that? So it's a lot of us across the whole earth, but literally we are few in number in the countries that we reside. It's not many of us. That's why they call us the minority. Okay? So you can imagine just how many of us that it was back in the ancient days, because it's a lot of us now. We're just scattered in pockets all across the country, all across the world. Yep. And it's sad, but it's time that we return back to Yah. That's what it's time for. So we're going to go to the history. I'm going to read the history section. Read the history section and look what it says. The geographical origins in the Atlantic slave trade. Although the vast majority had their roots in Africa, not all slaves made the trip directly to America. Some came from other Hispanic territories. Those from Africa belong mainly to groups coming from Western Sudan and ethnic Bantu. So think about it. You had Hebrews not only in Africa, you had Hebrews that were in Portugal, that were in Spain, that were in Ireland, okay, that were in Italy, Britain. You had Israelites in so many different countries around the 1400s, before those days too. You know, the 1200s, 1100s, 700s, even before then. A lot of our people were scattered in those Mediterranean countries. That's a big secret that they don't tell us. They want us to believe that every single slave came from Africa, right? But many of our ancestors, some of our ancestors came from Portugal, some came from Italy, some came from Spain. So you may see different black people in different countries, but one man, his ancestor may have came from the Congo. This other man, his ancestor may have came from the Ghanaian region. This man, his ancestor may have came from the Igbos in Nigeria. But this man, his ancestor may have came from Portugal, Spain, Italy, one of those places. You know, Sao Tome, you know, or Madagascar. Because remember, they also took Hebrew slaves and they actually shipped them to Africa, because Africa is not our homeland. Okay, so let's read. It says, the origin of the slaves is known through various documents such as transcripts of sales. Originally, the slaves came from Cape Verde and Guinea. Later, slaves was also taken from Angola. So we see that many of the slaves came from Western Sudan. What's Western Sudan? That's pretty much the region of the Gambia, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Mali, Senegal. Okay, specific tribes, not every single tribe, because I'm not saying that everyone in those countries are Hebrews. You got to do your research. It's specific tribes in all those countries I just named that are Hebrews. And then we know about the ethnic Bantus. Okay, the Congo. Most of the slaves, most of the Hebrews was brought from the Congo. But a lot of the people in the Congo, whether they know it or not, their ancestors was ruling in Portugal. Okay, Angola, the same thing. The Bantus, Congo, Angola, Gabon, or Gabon, however you pronounce it. Okay, Equatorial Guinea. Okay, all these places, Cameroon, the Igbos was kind of like involved with, caught up in that too, with the close to the Cameroonians. Okay, that's where most of the African American slaves came from them two regions, the Guinea area and the Bantu area, which is the Congo, Cameroonian, Angola area. Those are the two areas, right? Same thing with the Afro Mexicans, but those people were Hebrews, okay? Not Hamites or Africans, however people want to, whatever they want to call them, okay? So look what it says. Let's go to the 4th and 5th paragraph. It says, from the African continent, dark-skinned slaves were taken. The first true blacks were extracted from Arguin. Later in the 16th century, black slaves came from Bran, Bifidus, and Galafa. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. In Cape Verde, black slaves were classified into several types depending on their ethnic group and origin, but mostly from physical characteristics. There were two main groups. Once again, the first called retentos, also called swarthy. Okay, so swarthy. I don't know if you guys familiar, but it's a man, Benaniah. He got a channel, great channel, and he got a series called Hidden Hebrews, and he talks about this, about the Hebrews that came from Guinea and Portugal and Spain. They was called swarthy. Okay, because we naturally are ruddy people, that dark reddish undertone. And you see a lot of people in these regions today in the Guinean coast, which is present day Ghana, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Liberia. You see a lot of Hebrews in those countries today with that dark, ruddy color. A lot of the Hamites have that jet black. It's just jet black. But the Hebrews are very dark, but it's a ruddy, reddish undertone that comes with it. You know? And look what it says. Came from Sudan and the Guinean coast. Once again, the second type were amalatados or amenbrelados, or lighter skin color, when compared with the other blacks, and were distinguishable by their yellow skin tones. And what do our people like to say? Oh, she a yellow bone. Okay, because Hebrews came in many colors, but we all ruddy. You have some people that's a dark ruddy. You have some Hebrews that may even be jet black. You got Hebrews that are considered red bones or yellow bones, and they have that yellowish skin tone. Okay, and a lot of those people you will see in the Congo, in the Congo, Angola, the Igbos of Nigeria. You still see a lot of yellow bones in those regions in Africa. Okay, amongst the Bantus, you see a lot of yellow bones or yellow skin tones, red bones, right? Let's read the fifth paragraph. It says, the demand for slaves came early in the colonial period, especially between 1580 and 1640, when the indigenous population declined due to the new infectious diseases. Carlos V began to issue an increasing number of contracts between the Spanish crown and private slavers, specifically to bring Africans to Spanish colonies. These slaves made deals with the Portuguese, who controlled the African slave market. Mexico had important slave ports in the New World, sometimes holding slaves brought by Spanish before they were sent to other parts of Latin America and the Caribbean. Okay, so let's go to, I'm going to skip down to slave resistance, that category, right? Let's read it. It says, slave resistance. Although the vast majority of Africans did not overtly resist their enslavement, a few did, contesting their condition by rebellion and fleeing masters. Black slave rebellions occurred in Mexico as in other parts of the Americas, with one in Veracruz in 1537 and another in the Spanish capital of Mexico City. Runaway slaves were called cimarrones, who mostly fled to the highlands between Veracruz and Puebla, with a number making their way to the Costa Chica region in what are now Guerrero and Oaxaca. Runaways in Veracruz formed settlements called palenques, which would fight off Spanish authorities. The most famous of these was led by Gaspar Yanga, who fought the Spanish for 40 years until the Spanish recognized their autonomy in 1608, making San Lorenzo de los Negros, today Yanga, the first community of free blacks in America. You see that? Now let's read the scriptures. Deuteronomy 28, verse 7. See what it says. It says, Yah shall cause thine enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way and flee before thee 7 ways. So that's what would have happened if we would have obeyed Yah, right? But are we doing that today? No, we're not. Why? Because we turned away from Yah. So when you go to verse 25, it says, Yah shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. See, so the Afro Mexicans, who are the Hebrews, they fought. Gaspar Yang, I heard about him. He was a revolutionary. He stood up. But they're still in their present conditions. They still had to run from their enemies because they're under a spiritual judgment by Yah, because the Afro Mexicans, who are the real Hebrews, have to turn to Father Yah and keep his commandments and walk before him. Okay? Keep the Sabbath day holy, which is the 7th day, which is Saturday. Okay? Stop eating the pork and all those different things, because I know in Mexico pork is popular. You have to stop eating the pork and the shellfish and all these other abominable animals, okay? Which is in Leviticus 11. You have to be set apart. Okay, you have to stop celebrating these idols and wicked deities that you worship. Okay, so that the Most High can come and fight for us and release us under his judgment. So we're going to go to Afro Mexicans in the Catholic Church section, right? So let's read, first chapter. Catholicism shaped life among the vast majority of Africans in colonial society. Enslaved blacks were simultaneously members of the Christian community in chattel, private property of their owners. In general, the church did not take a stance against African slavery as an institution, although Dominican Friar Bartolome de las Casas later in life campaigned against their forced servitude, and the second Archbishop of Mexico, Alonso de Montufar, argued against it. Montufar condemned the transatlantic slave trade and sought its cessation, and viewed the benefits of incorporating Africans into Christianity as slaves not equal to the cost to rending their ties to family in Africa. His pleas and condemnations were ignored. Okay? Let's go. I'm going to read some of the second paragraph also. It says, church records of baptism, marriages, burials, and of inquisition indicate a high level of church's formal engagement with Africans. Enslaved and free Africans were full members of the church. As the African population was increased with the importation of unaccorrelated slaves, banzalas, white elites became concerned with controlling slaves' behavior and maintaining Christian orthodoxy. Wow. So what is this saying? Simple. They use religion against our people. Christianity, which stems from Catholicism, and they use Catholicism also, right? That's what they use. And they took you guys, you Afro Mexicans, they took you to their country as slaves and forced you to serve other gods. Some of your ancestors also just was openly, they didn't care. They wanted to serve other gods, right? And that's why we're in this present condition as a people, no matter where we are. All the black people, the Negroes in every country. This is why we're in this present condition, because we still worship the gods of our enemies, of the heathens. We still worship the idols of the people around us instead of being a light to those people. We still turn away from Yah and don't keep his commandments. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 48. It says, therefore thou shalt serve thine enemies, which Yah shall send against thee, in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. And when they brought you over there to Mexico, on those ships, you were in hunger, you were in thirst, and you were in nakedness, and you was in want of all things. And they put a yoke of iron upon your neck when they brought you to Mexico, you Afro Mexicans. And they sold you as slaves, right? And in this present day, in this present time, no matter where the Hebrews are, we're still serving our enemies to some degree. in one of all things, right? And we still have a yoke upon our neck, even though we can't see it, right? Right. So we have to turn back to Father Yah. That is the true goal. Because the people who are fighting against us, they have a power behind them. And it's Satan. So it's time for the Hebrews, who are the Negroes scattered across the world, to turn back to Yah, our power, who will fight for us. Okay. Let's go to Afro Mexicans and race mixture paragraph. It says, from early in the colonial period, African and African descendant people had offspring with Europeans or indigenous people. This led to an elaborate set of racial terms for mixtures which appeared during the 18th century. The offspring of mixed race couples was divided into three groups: mestizo for Spanish, white, indigenous; mulatto for Spanish/white, black; and lobo, wolf, or zambo, sometimes used as a synonym; and zambago or zambago for black, indigenous. However, there was an overlap in these categories with recognized black mestizos. Black mestizos account for less than 0.5%. You see that? Black mestizos only count for 0.5% of the Mexican population as of today. But they like to say, oh, you guys are mixed and you have white and this and that, and, don't believe it. Okay, like I said, it's a lot of blacks who are mixed. But a lot of times you can look at them and tell they mix. You can look at their features and tell they are mixed. And if you can't, they probably have a white ancestor, but it's so long ago that it doesn't even count today. The Most High doesn't make mistakes, okay? Don't act like he don't know where his people are. Don't act like he wouldn't leave a trace of his people. We are scattered across the whole world, and we are the Afros of today. They consider us Afros in the different countries that we're in. Of the Mexican population as of today. In addition, skin tone further divided the mestizo and mulatto categories. This loose hierarchical system of classification is sometimes called the Sistema de Castas. Although its existence has recently been questioned as a 20th century ideological construct, Las Castas paintings were produced during the 18th centuries, commissioned by the King of Spain to reflect Mexican society at that time. They portrayed the three races, European, indigenous, and African, in their complicated mixing. They are based on family groups with parents and children labeled according to their caste. They have 16 squares and a hierarchy. Some genetic tests show that an average Mexican has about only 4% sub-Saharan African ancestry, indicating that the Afro Mexican population disappeared because it was absorbed into the larger Mexican gene pool. Other studies show that African admixture in modern-day Mexicans largely reflects the African admixture already present in Spanish settlers. Okay, but they are not disappeared. Okay, look. Remember, Psalms chapter 83. He said, "They are taking crafty counsel against your hidden ones." Okay, for the longest, people didn't know who the real Hebrews were. They thought that the people that are in Israel today, the white people, are Hebrews. And that's why when they read the Bible, they don't understand none of the prophecies that they read. How can you understand the prophecies when you don't even know who the real Hebrews are? You won't be able to understand them. But I'm telling you right now, the real Hebrews are the black people who were scattered across the world in the transatlantic slave trade. The Afro Mexicans, okay? You are Hebrews, okay? And I'm going to continue this, and I'm going to go to every single country and show who the Hebrews are, okay? Because they need to know, because the time is close. So I pray that you got something from this. Afro Mexicans, you are the Hebrews. Turn back to Father Yah and repent. Turn back to him and keep his laws and his commandments and his statutes. Seek Yah. Seek Yahushua HaMashiach, the Messiah, Christ. Seek him. Okay? Pray to him tonight. to give you wisdom, knowledge, and understanding about the video that you just saw, that you may get wisdom, knowledge, and understanding on how to serve him, that you may receive your true inheritance, which is in Israel. I pray that you all got something from this. Shalom.
I say I'm Mexican, 100% Mexican, and I am quite familiar that I have some African in me, but I'm not sure why or how it happened. I just have an idea.
I'd rather consider myself Afro Mexicans because Chicano people are gonna be like, "Oh, you're from Mexico." Like, what?
Afro Mexicano.
Descendiente, yo diría.
Afro Mexicano.
Afro Mexicano?
I feel like I don't belong anywhere. I feel like I can't, like, I don't have a place, you know? And I feel like that's just the only thing that's keeping me back.
I think one of the saddest things that can happen to somebody is to not know what they are or where they're from. A lot of these folks, especially when they grow up in communities where being different is not okay, or the dominant culture is not theirs, they don't have their self-esteem is low, you know. So knowing who they are, I think helps them with their confidence and their self-esteem.